This is the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke, the 12th chapter. Glory to you, Lord. Jesus said, I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. I have a baptism with which to be baptized, and what stress I am under until it is completed. Do you think that I've come to bring peace to the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, 5 in one household will be divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3 they will be divided. Father against son, and mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. He also said to the crowds, when you see a cloud rising in the west, you immediately say it's going to rain. And so it happens. And when you see the south wind blowing, you say there will be scorching heat, and it happens. You hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of earth and sky, but why do you not know how to interpret the present time? The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord. Please be seated. May God's grace and peace be with you all today. So there we had it, a gospel reading. Gospel supposed to mean good news. But you heard the words. You think I've come to bring peace to the earth from Jesus? No, I tell you, but rather division. And so he goes on, really as though we need more conflict in our world. I know that there have always been divisions and differences among people. I think we're all aware of that if we've been around for any amount of time, but these past few years have felt like those divisions and conflicts are both everywhere and bigger than ever. Do we really need Jesus then to be promoting conflict and division? Now, you heard Jesus uses the examples of divisions within families, father against son, son against father, mother against daughter-in-law, daughter against mother. He even uses that stereotypical one of the mother-in-law, and throws that one in as too. It reminded me of a country western song I heard on K-Pig yesterday. I don't like half the people that I love. But family life, we all know about conflict within families. But I think even though this image is used, a conflict and division that Jesus talks about are not, I don't think, simply about the stuff that goes on in families that's gone on for time immemorial, and is sort of inevitable as well. Even though he uses the example of a regular family, I have a feeling he really maybe has another kind of family in mind. That is, it's not simply the ordinary human family where we do disagree about things, particularly with the ones we're closest to, and a certain amount of conflict is unavoidable if we're actually human beings living together. But instead, I think he is talking about the division that religion can cause, and even more specifically, divisions and conflicts within the family of faith, the households of faith, these conflicts and divisions that will occur because of who Jesus is and what he stands for, what he teaches. Now, you may also know from personal experience and this can be very hard, the way that religious belief or the rejection of it can divide families. Truth is, there are times as well that religion can seem one of the most divisive things in family. And well, it's understandable sometimes why that's a topic that is off of conversation, to not promote that feeling of division. Certainly, Jesus was right about that almost from the beginning of things. There were conflicts within the family of faith. I don't just mean individual families, but within the church. There were the divisions about, well, what mattered, about how to live, what to believe in, how to act. Early on, in fact, the biggest argument was about who was part of God's kingdom and who wasn't. Does it include Gentiles, foreigners, slaves, and eunuchs, women? Or are they somehow excluded? We have that conflict recorded right in the Bible, in the book of the Acts of the Apostles. There's the conflict between Peter and Paul, where Paul calls Peter to task for backtracking on welcoming Gentile Christians to share his table, and it takes the direct intervention of God with a vision to show him a different way than that he had been taught in his own tradition. I'm pretty certain that in talking about bringing conflict, Jesus doesn't mean to reinforce the kinds of divisions that come from our regular old orneriness with each other. Instead, what Jesus lived and died for was precisely to create a new and larger kind of human family beyond biology, where all are related because all are children of the same God. Jesus' words then suggest that, well, there are some things worth fighting about, and that peace at any cost is not an option when it comes to the kinds of things that he stands for, that he taught and lived and died for. There are some conflicts within the family of faith that are real, and no amount of denial will make them go away. The German Lutheran theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who opposed the Nazis and challenged the German National Church with a confessing church movement, said it this way: your yes to God requires your no to all injustice, evil, to all lies, to all oppression and violation of the weak and the poor. So it is that Jesus' vision of a new all-encompassing family of God is in conflict with any view that would limit the scope of God's love or who's included in God's kingdom. And so it is in this time. I find myself in conflict with brothers and sisters within the Christian faith who say otherwise. It matters, and no amount of trying to avoid or postpone the conflict is going to make it go away. And so it is, it seems to me, in this time that we live now, with the ascendancy of versions, I would say perversions of Christianity that seek to exclude and divide, that promote fear of the other, and do it in the name of Christ. It's not that it's new. The burning crosses of the Ku Klux Klan or the earlier version of today's renewed linkage now in our time of white supremacy, Christian nationalism, where the cross, the very symbol of the boundless character of God's love, becomes instead an icon of hate and fear. You know, while we are called and are free in our nation to live out our deepest Christian values, the movement into the mainstream of conspiracy theories, of replacement of white people, the notion that to be an American, you have to be a Christian, that one religion is favored over another. We, as followers of Christ in our time, are called to challenge these distortions of the Christian faith. In today's readings, Jesus talks about reading the signs of the time. You know, I think that's a challenge, a difficult challenge in any time. Somehow in the way he talks about it, it's like looking at the weather. It doesn't seem that easy to me. But I think that is the challenge of our time, a difficult challenge, and especially knowing that our brothers and sisters in the faith, that there are many that promote these distortions either unknowingly or unwittingly, that seek to live out a genuine faith, but that somehow has been put in bondage to fear. That's precisely the reason that in reading the signs of the times and being formed by Jesus's way of compassion, justice, and truth, that we are called in this time to engage our brothers and sisters, to join in conversation. I also think, importantly, to empathize with those bound by fears and feelings of being forgotten by our economic and social systems. And yet, also to challenge our Christian brothers and sisters on this central matter of proclaiming the boundless reach of God's love that transcends nation or race or ethnicity or religion. I find it difficult to talk about these matters before I get too self-righteous or sure that I alone have a hold on the truth, with God's gentle and sometimes not so gentle prodding. I'm forced to put in practice what I'm arguing, to remember that, well, there is something else, something beyond our divisions and even the important differences between us on these matters. There is something else, something greater that unites us all. It is God's love. And so it is that we are called to speak the truth in love. This is the example of Jesus, of course, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for all our sake endured suffering and humiliation that we might know a peace that passes human understanding. Not a peace that is the absence of conflict, but a peace that is the presence of God's healing and transforming love. Amen.